In this video, we'll take a look at some tips and guidelines for creating good user interfaces. The well-designed user interface is easy to use, not difficult, intuitive, not frustrating, productive, not anxiety-building, and it's pleasant, not scary. Good programs have good user interfaces. Good user interface designers know their users. Let's talk a little bit about the return on investment of good design. Aaron Marcus, the president of AM&A, states that making computer-based products more usable is smart business. It pays to do it right. The Usability First website's article measuring usability ROI indicates that the identification and eradication of design flaws results repeatedly in more sales, fewer development costs, shorter development time, higher rate of customer acquisition, increased customer loyalty, increased productivity, and stronger brand equity. Many studies prove over and over again that the investment you make in design pays off. The Usability First website has a nice reference list of books and studies highlighting the good effects of including user-centered design in the overall system requirements. Again, good design is smart business. Now, the study of human-computer interaction has been around as long as computers themselves. There are three segments or branches to the study of human-computer interaction that apply to the designing of good user interfaces. The first one is usability. Usability is all about making things easy and enjoyable to use. Usability is a measure of the interactive user experience associated with the user interface. A user-friendly interface design is easy to learn, supports users' tasks and goals efficiently and effectively, and is satisfying and engaging to use. The second branch that applies is called user-centered design, or UCD. It's the process of designing a tool from the perspective of how it will be understood and used by a human user. The result of employing UCD to a system design is a product that offers a more efficient, satisfying, and user-friendly experience for the user, which is likely to increase sales and customer loyalty. And the third branch is user experience. User experience, UX, or user experience design, UXD, entails conducting the user research exercises with intended users of a system. By understanding the human emotions, motivations, and beliefs that surround a task, a user interface can be designed to accommodate and support user behaviors in a way that users will experience as natural and satisfying. Now, this is a simplistic overview of these areas, but helpful especially if you're looking to hire out specific design skills, whether it be employing user-centered design or creating a user experience and tapping into more of the human emotions and motivations of using a product. All of these areas emphasize the importance of understanding your users. Now, realistically, a lot of us end up being a team of one when we're asked to put on the design hat. So if in your situation, if you're wearing the UI designer hat but don't have a lot of experience, keep it simple and keep your focus on this equation. The business needs plus the user needs plus the GUI standards of the operating system in which your application will be running will equal your design principles. Now, of course, usability, user-centered design, and user experience all flow into and can be incorporated into the user needs, but those together will become your guiding principles. Now, it's good to remember that your users are key to this process, and users are people too. Things to keep in mind as we are reminded of by Joel Spolsky's Designing for People Who Have Better Things to Do with Their Lives. Your users probably don't read the manual, can't control the mouse very well, like to feel in control, are better at recognition than recall, remember grouped things better, learn by doing, rely on previous experiences, and individually differ in how they learn to use your product. and is probably slightly different than how you would learn it. In other words, know thy user and remember that good user interface design centers around the user. With that said, let's walk through some of the guiding UI design principles. Consistency, directness, feedback, forgiveness, simplicity, user control, and visual integrity. These come from Trandy Tower's video, Creating a Well-Designed User Interface, and we'll step through each of them, and I'll just summarize for you what they mean and what you might keep in mind while you're working on your UI design. So the first design principle to keep in mind is consistency. This means internal consistency with terms, metaphors, and users' conceptual model, and external consistency with the overall environment. So if, for example, internally keeping terms consistent, keeping metaphors consistent, if on the user's operating system a trash can is used for deleting or recycling or sending deleted data away, then that would be a good choice. If it's something else, you would want to choose something that is consistent for them. External consistency, meaning that the copy-paste command keys and options, the menu locations, are all comfortable given the user's current environment. A next design principle to keep in mind is directness. Where you can, don't make users guess. Provide as much information as possible and help them along in such a way that you save them time and save them energy. Support direct manipulation. Allow the user to jump wherever they need to in order to complete what they need to complete. So as they're working through a form, if they have made a mistake somewhere and want to go back to it, make sure that going to somewhere else in the form can be directly manipulated by them. And use familiar metaphors. Another design principle that's important is feedback. Provide immediate cues to what might be going wrong or what might be going right. For example, a status on how far through the form they are can be very helpful. You can provide both visual and auditory feedback, so both sight and sound. Be careful with auditory feedback that it doesn't become annoying. Make sure the feedback is appropriate to the task, and give the user the option to turn off feedback. Something that we see now that's pretty standard is to give the user a checkbox that says, don't show this message again. That allows them to determine when they are ready to turn off that feedback. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is important. What this means is that you want to give the user the ability to discover. So support discovery. Make your program in such a way that the user really can't make a mistake. They can explore, they can use it, they can be comfortable in it, and if they do something that they need to get out of, make it possible for that to be reversible or recoverable. Also, in terms of forgiveness, especially with data applications, make sure you warn about potential data loss. You might even, if you have large screens, that the large areas where the user is entering a lot of data or working with a lot of data, you might do automatic behind the scenes updates or writes to the database to, or at least somewhere saving their work. Simplicity. The KISS standard, keep it simple, stupid, and progressive disclosure. Progressive disclosure simply means giving the user more information as they need it. So the more simple you can keep your design, the better. You always want to err on the side of making something less complex for them and easier to use. User control. This means that all the actions and the program are all initiated by the user, that there's a lot of user control. They feel like they are manning the ship. Minimize modal interaction. In other words, don't require them to constantly approve or disapprove actions, make it so that it's more seamless for them and that they feel in control as they're working through the program. Also, it's great to support personalization and customization, anything you can do to make the environment more comfortable for them in terms of how they've used it before, some settings that they particularly like, perhaps the way the toolbar is set up, or a particular set of user settings that you supply. You want to support personalization and customization where you can. And the last one, visual integrity. Provide visual cues to the user, perhaps by grouping things and using color and groups to identify areas that are part of the same group, for example. Intuitive function of graphical elements. Make sure that the buttons and the toolbar icons and the icons that you choose to use have an intuitive function, that it's obvious what it is that that particular toolbar or icon will do. And lastly, certainly graphic designers are extremely skilled. It can be very beneficial to have someone from usability or user experience or user-centered design work with you, depending on your needs, to look at your program and work through any of the glitches that you might be able to fix to make your program much more user-friendly. Now, there's 3 layers to usable forms that I want to talk about, because creating forms can be such a big part of the user interface, especially when writing Genero programs. The first layer, I've been thinking about creating a very usable form, is the relationship. The relationship layer is the trust that you're building, the information that you're requesting from the user, and making sure that that relationship is not fractured, or is not, no boundaries are not crossed, in making them feel resistant to the application. The second, and really the very important one when working with user interface design or in user interface design, is the conversation. Is there flow to your form? Are you providing progress indicators? Are you validating in a kind and efficient way that lets the user skip some data entry if possible, and is, for example, supplying the information from screen to screen and not requiring them to duplicate their work anywhere in the program? And lastly, appearance. What kind of emotional response might your user have from looking at your form? Are you grouping things? Are you including progressive disclosure to allow them to see as much as they need at any given time? You can find this and more by looking at Jerry Gaffney's work, for example, in his article, Forms, the Art of Writing Very Little. And lastly, it's important to note that design standards do evolve over time. On the left here, you'll see a website called uipatterns.com, and it's the work of a Danish web developer who's seeking to categorize what has before seemed like an ad hoc approach to developing web applications. So he's listing in different ways of solving common design problems. For example, here the user has entered data into a system and expects to receive feedback on the result of a submission. It shows an example, it shows the usage and the solution, and also provides other web developers to agree or disagree on particular design patterns. This can be very helpful because you can quickly see what might be standard at any given time that you might be working on, for example, a new web-based application. The other one here is the Society of Technical Communication. They have a usability portion of their website that does link you to the platform standards for the various operating systems. These can be very helpful as a baseline for making sure that your application works comfortably within the operating system that you're designing for. In summary, organize your design principles around the business needs, your user needs, and the standards for the operating system in which your program will be running.